Welcome to another Fast Tech video. Before we start, please go ahead and smash that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. That costs you nothing and it helps us out a lot. So please go ahead and do that before we start this video. In this video tutorial, I'm going to be showing you guys how to fix the blinking red light issue on your Nintendo NES. This problem happens because of bad contact pins on the cartridge reader, and I'm going to be showing you guys how to clean the cartridge reader today. And while I'm in there, I'm also going to be showing you guys how to do all kinds of general maintenance and cleaning on this Nintendo NES. This video was brought to you by the Fast Tech Pro Auto Kit, which is an automatic screwdriver you can use to disassemble not just your Nintendo NES, but your Nintendo Wii, Wii U, Nintendo Switch, PlayStation, Xbox, and more. It even has a bit you can use to disassemble McDonald's toys with, in case you weren't sold already. Links are going to be in the description box and the top comment. Let's get started. So we're going to start the disassembly on our Nintendo NES. I'm going to flip it over. We're going to need a Phillips screwdriver to open these screws. Our Fast Tech Pro Toolkit is not going to make it in the screw holes because it doesn't go deep enough. The head isn't long enough. So since our Fast Tech Pro Auto Kit is not going to make it inside those screw holes, we're going to use a regular Phillips screwdriver. And we do sell these regular Phillips screwdrivers on our website as well. Links are going to be in the description box and in the top comment. We can just leave the screws in there for now. We don't have to pull them out. Last one. Now we're gonna turn it over. The screws will fall out once I do this. They're all the same size Phillips screws, so you can't mix them up. Four, supposed to be two more. Once I lift up the top cover, the rest of the screws are just gonna fall out. There's 6 screws in total. This cover has been yellowed out over the years. So we're going to be cleaning this before we put it back on. It's crazy how simple things were back in 1988 when this thing came out. A lot has changed since these came out in the 80s. Game consoles have become a lot more complicated than this. Even the PlayStation 1 that I disassembled looks like a supercomputer compared to this. As you can see at the back, this was manufactured 1985. This is older than I am. I was born in 1992. So this system was manufactured 7 years before I was. The most common point of failure on these Nintendo NES systems is this game cartridge reader. And that's because the pins inside that you're looking at right now, they get dirty. And over the years, putting cartridges in and out, the contacts become either corroded or sticky, and the system stops reading the cartridges. So I'm going to be showing you guys how to fix that. We're going to be removing some screws. Now we can bust out the Fast Tech Pro Auto Kit, which is going to save us a lot of time with this disassembly. We're going to need to work with a bigger Phillips head. What I like about disassembling these old systems, the PlayStation 1 had the same thing. The screws are all the same size almost. Or there's 2 different size screws at most. And these older systems were built with repair in mind, unlike the newer systems, where they don't even want you to open it. And there's like warranty stickers that you have to bypass and void to open them. There's none of that here. And there's not 7,000 different kinds of screws to confuse you. Like, these are the same kinds of screws that are removed from the case. And this is my first time disassembling a Nintendo. Because as I mentioned, this system is a little bit before my time. I was not even a protein cell in my dad's kneecap when this thing came out. So I've never even played on one of these systems. I just know they exist, and there's a crowd of people now who are into the retro scene, and so yeah, that's why I'm disassembling one of these, but I've never played on one of these systems. At this point, we're gonna remove this shield. It's gonna come right off, and now we have access to the game cartridge reader. Now, you can replace this piece entirely by removing these screws. And there's a new revised third-party cartridge reader where instead of the cartridge going in and then you have to push it down like this, you don't have to push the new ones down. You just stick it straight in, and we do sell those on our website as well. Links are going to be in the description box. And this is what the replacement cartridge looks like. But today I'm going to be showing you guys how to fix your existing one. So you guys see in there that the pins look a bit yellowed out. That's not what they're supposed to look like. They're supposed to look silver. So some of these pin contacts, if they get too dirty, they'll stop reading the cartridge. There's a few ways to clean this, but first we're gonna have to remove the cartridge itself. There's some screws that are holding it in. Why is this one loose? This one was already loose. That's interesting. These ones were loose already, so I'm guessing maybe someone disassembled this system. I don't know. So these screws are not the same length as the case, so you want to keep these ones separate. These are not the same screws as the case and the rest of them that we removed so far, even though they might look it, but they're not. These ones are shorter. These ones are like the case screws, but not these two that are removed. So now we're gonna lift out this piece here from the front. We're just gonna lift it out, and I'm just pulling it forward, but be gentle here. And now it's gonna come out like this. That's the cartridge itself, and the slot that reads the cartridge is here. This is the main component that we're gonna be working on today. Now there's a point it slots in on the motherboard. We have to like pull it outwards. We have to lift the motherboard slightly, but don't flex it too much. And then just pull the slot out. So I don't know if this electrical tape is OEM. I would hope not. But then again, back in those days, I wouldn't be surprised if this is how it left the factory. Some electrical tape here covering the connectors with some dust on it. Now I've never put electrical tape and left it in a device, but if this is OEM, then why not, right? Maybe we'll replace this little piece of electric tape. But maybe I'm gonna look at other videos and see if this is an OEM, but if it is, I'm pretty surprised, but not so much at the same time. So this is the main logic board. As you can see how simple this is. There's no fans or no heatsink, even as far as I can see. There's this metal part at the bottom to keep this whole thing cooled passively, but there's no fan or there's no active cooling on this system like you would find in a modern gaming console. Things were really simple back then. So this is the connector that we're working on. The pins on these is what causes the issues. Now I've seen several YouTube videos where people would boil water and then put this in a pot of boiling water for 10 minutes, take it out, clean it with a toothbrush, install it, and it would fix the problem. But I would recommend using isopropyl alcohol, and we sell this on our website at fasttechstore.com. I wouldn't recommend using boiling water because it is possible to deform the plastic or cause other kinds of issues if you use water. So I would not recommend doing that, but I've seen videos on YouTube where people have been successful fixing it that way. So I soaked the connector in some isopropyl alcohol, which can be bought at fasttechstore.com, just like all other Nintendo NES parts. I wiped down the connector with some Q-tips. The great thing about isopropyl alcohol is that it evaporates very, very quickly, so by the time you reassemble this thing, it's not going to be on the contacts anymore, so you don't have to worry about a short. Now I know what I said earlier about not boiling this connector in a pot of water, but for some of you, that is going to be the only option you're going to have when fixing this connector. So, if cleaning it with isopropyl alcohol doesn't work, boil some water in a pot, make sure it's distilled water or spring water, bare minimum, since tap water has impurities that could cause corrosion. You want to make sure that the water is bubbling as seen here. Then, put a timer on your phone for 5 minutes. 10 minutes is the maximum that I would ever recommend. But beware that if you overheat this connector, the plastic on it could be deformed. So be very, very careful when doing this step. And as always, you are doing this at your own risk. Now this may seem like a dumb idea, because on paper it is. But there's a saying in the US Army: if it works, it's not a dumb idea. I read several articles and Reddit posts and watched several YouTube videos with a good amount of views and likes where people have successfully fixed their Nintendo NES using this method. But, as I said once before, do this at your own risk. If you screw something up, it's not my fault. Once the timer's up, obviously you want to make sure that this thing is bone dry before you put it back into your Nintendo NES. This goes without saying, but I just figured it was worth mentioning. As they say, common sense ain't that common. Also, I figured it was worth mentioning that if you guys are having issues removing the cartridge the way I removed it, you can also remove the entire motherboard. And there's a screw here, and there's another screw in this corner that are holding it in. So we're just gonna go ahead and remove these screws so you guys can see how to do it another way if my way is not working for you. There's another one here. And now, once this is out, we have the whole motherboard assembly out. There's some cables that are still connecting on this end, so you want to be careful. And once we remove these cables and remove this shield, or you can even push this shield back and then lift this piece out that way, and that might be easier in some cases. So if we were here at this point, we would just push the shield back, push back the slot, and it'll come out a lot easier this way for some of you. So now we have the slot out, and the shield is separated from the board. And believe it or not, guys, this was an add-on slot if you wanted to connect additional hardware. And then I know there was some kind of a Minnesota lottery system that ran on this or something like that. Again, this was before my time, so I was too young to even ever own one of these systems. Our first game console was a PS2. But basically that's what this slot was for. It was an expansion slot before the time of USBs. Now that we've gotten this far, now let's move on to further disassembling this system. There's some cables on the side, and they're not just connectors that you can pull out. There's these clips that you have to lift up slightly, ever so gently, because you can easily break these. So lift up the clip and then pull out the cable like that. Boom. Same thing here. So little tabs that we have to lift up. One on this side, one on this side. And the tweezers you can have part of our Fast Tech Pro Toolkit. Links in the description box. Same with the blue connector here. Lift it up just around here. Create some space. And then pull out. Boom. Like that. Easy. Now we can remove this shield that's on the back of the system. And that's the motherboard in a Nintendo NES system. As you can see, it's very, very simple. There's no big die on it or anything like that. It's just these chips that do all the processing. Unbelievable how far we've come from 1986, which is when this was manufactured. NTSC, which is the American TV system back then. We don't follow these formats anymore. It used to be NTSC PAL, and then in NTSC there was NTSC U, and then NTSC J. J was for Japan, U was for United States. And that's the little TV decoder box to use on old ass TVs that nobody uses anymore. Most of the TVs don't even have these AV inputs, and they definitely do not have the antenna, the single antenna style connector for the super analog, super old TVs. We do sell these boards on our website at fasttechstore.com or fasttech.ca, and you can use the coupon code YouTube for a discount. Along with everything else in this Nintendo, we sell all kinds of components for all game consoles, not just the NES, but your Wii, Wii U, what's the fucking handheld one? And your Nintendo Switch, PlayStation, Xbox. We got all kinds of parts, so check us out, fasttechstore.com. Earlier I thought that one of these pins was damaged, which it kind of looks like it is. And I was going to resolder it, but then I noticed that this doesn't actually connect to anything. It's a dummy pin. So we're just going to go ahead and leave that. As you can see, there's no connection to anything. I'm not very familiar with these systems. This is the first time I've taken one of these apart, and I am amazed by how simple these are. And before we move on, I want to show you guys a security bypass on these Nintendo NES systems, which I learned recently. So to bypass the security protection on this system, what you can do, and people do this to run pirated games, but we're not going to do it for those reasons. We would never do such a thing. This chip, the fourth pin on this chip, 1, 2, 3, 4, this pin that I'm touching right now, 1, 2. So this fourth pin that I'm touching here, if you rip this pin off the board, you can desolder it. The proper way to disabling it would be with a Hakko soldering iron, and we sell these on our website at fasttechstore.com. We recommend this soldering iron for all your electronics repairs. You can disable the fourth pin, which is the pin that I'm touching right now, this pin. Fourth pin from the left side. If you desolder this from the board, or if you don't have a soldering iron, you don't want to invest in one, even though you should if you work with electronics, you can use a screwdriver or a tool that looks like this and simply pull out this fourth pin by sticking something in here and then pulling it off. But you want to be careful not to damage these components. But I'm not going to be doing that today. That's not the job. That's not why I disassembled this. But I know that if you disable this fourth pin here, if you rip it off the board or desolder it, again with a soldering iron or a tool like this, the Nintendo NES system is going to run all kinds of cartridges, and not just the ones that Nintendo wants you to run. Wink, wink. And now some people do this because they want to get their console to simply work again, because most of the times when these slots fail, it's because the copyright section of these pins fails, and then the Nintendo can't see if the game's original or not, so even an original game it wouldn't run. So another way to fix that is to break that connection on this fourth pin here on this chip. And this is what that chip looks like one more time. It says Nintendo on it. That's the chip that we're going to be working on if we do what I just mentioned. This is the copyright protection chip. But quick disclaimer that I have heard that some games might stop working if you do this, but I figured that was worth mentioning. Now I'm going to start reassembling the system. We're going to reattach the shield. This slot is a great guide for you to see where it goes. Before I put the board back in the case, I want to give it a clean. So we're going to use some paper towels. You can also use some alcohol spray it in there a little bit, not too much. Just give it a nice wipe. Most of your systems are going to be a lot dirtier than this one. As you can see, even though it appeared clean, there was some dust that is coming off. That definitely looks like smoker's dust. You can imagine that the system has probably changed a lot of hands over the years, or kids that used to eat gummy bears, you know, eventually got older, picked up smoking, still kept the Nintendo. So this system has been through a lot, as you can imagine. But it held up the test of time pretty well. I wonder how many Xboxes and PlayStations that are manufactured today are still going to be in people's living rooms 20, 30 years from now, like some of these have still managed to do. Before I move forward, I want to show you guys that you can remove the controller connectors at the front by removing these two screws. You'll see that this piece comes out, and then you can simply pull out the controller ports if you need to clean them or replace them or whatever else you need to do. If your controllers are not connecting, I recommend cleaning out the ports as shown in this clip here with some paper towels and isopropyl alcohol. And you can put everything back in place. Put this plastic piece back on with the two screws that hold it in. And clean the case with isopropyl alcohol as well. But I am going to be giving this case a deep clean with some soap and some warm water to really get all of that grime and dirt off of it. And for case cleaning, I would recommend a very conservative amount of isopropyl alcohol. You do want to mix it with some water. I would say about a 30% to 70% split. 30% alcohol, 70% water, because isopropyl alcohol, just like any other kind of alcohol, can ruin plastic finishes. I did the same thing with a game cartridge holder. Wiped it down with isopropyl alcohol. You don't have to worry about the plastic look of that being ruined because no one's going to see it, but you have to worry about that with the top case. The alcohol that I'm using has been mixed with water because I wouldn't put pure isopropyl alcohol on that surface. It's about a 70-30 split, as I mentioned earlier. That's where you want it to be. And you want to be particularly careful with the Nintendo Entertainment System text at the front, because if you use too much alcohol, you can wipe that off. Now, if you're a perfectionist like I am and you want to give your Nintendo NES the best possible clean that it can get, I would recommend giving it a bath in some warm soapy water. You can use dish soap. I'm using Dawn in this case. Just mix it with some warm water. Use a toothbrush to clean the case. Make sure to get in all of the nooks and crannies and the vents. Got the top cleaned. I wanted to do the same thing to the bottom part of the case. So I got the power and reset buttons out of there. There's a couple of screws that hold it in. I got it out with my Fastech Pro Auto Kit. Gave them a nice cleaning with some isopropyl alcohol and paper towels. Got the controller ports out of there one more time, and then dunked this piece into our water and soap solution and cleaned it with a brush. It goes without saying that you want to make sure all these components are bone dry before you start reassembly. Now that the case is clean and I've made sure it's dry, now we're ready to reassemble this Nintendo NES. And if this video helps you out, please be sure to drop a like. We have to install the ports back into the frame. The smaller side cable is going to be on the left side here. And the longer side cable is going to be on the right side. Now we're going to install this piece and these two screws. So this piece goes on first, like that, and then the bottom slots on. Fast-Tech Pro Auto Kit is gonna be saving us a lot of time with this. It makes a 1 hour disassembly a 15-minute disassembly. Now we're gonna install the power and reset button. We're gonna push the buttons. We're gonna push the buttons through. Like that. And then we line it up here. There's two screws that go in here. These ones, the most common ones in the system. There's only 3 different types of screws, which makes this whole process very, very easy. One of them goes in here. Get this cable out of the way, the other one goes in here. Test everything to make sure it connects. Yes. Before I reinstalled the slot on the motherboard, I also decided to clean these pins because these can also cause problems if dirty. As you can see, there was a significant amount of dirt that came off on the Q-tip. So I decided to clean it a little bit further. I did the same thing on the other side because there's pins on both sides of the board. So I gave them a nice clean again with isopropyl alcohol just to make sure that we don't have any issues. Some people have also suggested bending some of these pins, but I wouldn't recommend that. I would say if you have to go that far, you should probably just replace the connector. We're going to start reassembling the motherboard assembly. The back plate goes on first. The slot is a great guide on how it goes, and the other thing you want to make sure is that these holes line up. Now that we have the shield on, we can reinstall this connector. And the side that has pins on both sides is the one that goes on the board. And it goes on something like this. That's how it goes on. And then you line it up and then you push it down. Don't be afraid of breaking it. It's not going to break if you put it in the right way. Now we're going to install the cables that we had removed. This one here for the power and reset button goes on like this. The pins are going to be facing downwards. And now for the controller cables. The shorter one is going to go in the front. All right, the pins are going to be facing upwards on this. All right, like this. This is how it's going to go. You can look at the colors on the cables and you'll notice that the purple cable is on this side and that's how it's supposed to go in. And the longer cable is for this side. And then line it up. You notice that the purple cable is on this side. As I'm doing this, push it in and then push these clips down to help secure the cables in. That was some Japanese over engineering with those clips, but that's okay. We're gonna make sure that none of these wires get in the path of these screw holes, because then you're gonna drill a screw through it and then you'll be screwed, literally. So if you don't wanna be screwed, then make sure that these cables stay out of the way. Put the motherboard in its place. Now there's a couple of screws that we need to install. All Phillips, of course. One of them goes up here. Other screw goes in here. That right there, ladies and gentlemen, is skill. The greatest of all time. Greatest of all time. I'm the greatest.
I am the greatest.
I feel like Muhammad Ali of tech. That's how I feel. Now we're going to be installing the cartridge assembly. And this slot is going to go through the plastic. And then we're just going to push it in like that. You see how it just slides on? Very, very easy. And you want to test this assembly right here. Make sure that nothing's out of place. And make sure that none of the cables get in the way, which was happening here. So you want to get that cable out of the way. And now, make sure that everything sticks in place nicely, and it does. And now we're going to reinstall the screws. So it's these screws that go in here, just like all the other screws we put in so far. Same screws, in case you guys are wondering. Okay, so the only kinds of screws this system uses are these Phillips screws mostly. The only different screws were for this slot here. These ones were different. But the rest of the screws are all the same, with the exception of these longer Phillips screws. And there's these two screws that are longer than the rest of them. They look very, very similar, so you would think they're the same, but no, you'll notice that one of them's slightly longer. So one of the tall screws goes in here, this slot here, and the other one goes in here. And then the rest of them here. 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 And another one goes in here. Now, there is this piece of tape here. To be honest with you, I am not sure at all if this is OEM or not, but I'm sure if it is OEM, it serves a purpose. So we're gonna replace this 35-year-old electric tape. If it is OEM, I'm gonna take it off, and exactly as I take it off, I'm gonna put a brand new 2022 piece of electric tape. This is what restoration of an old Nintendo system looks like, ladies and gentlemen. We're using electric tape for the first time ever here at Fast Tech on our YouTube channel. So you guys are witnessing history here. So drop a like and subscribe to the channel. This is some groundbreaking technology right here. Now we're gonna install this shield back on. And then you can put the electric tape bit. Screw goes in here. Another one goes in here. Here. And as you're screwing the screw, make sure that these cables are not in the slots, as I mentioned earlier. Another one in here. Here. Another one in here. One in here. and another one in here. Now, if you've done this correctly, you should have 6 screws left, and these are for the case. Now we're gonna install the case back on. Very, very easy. You just line it up, flip it around, and insert the screws back in. And our FastTech Pro Auto Kit isn't gonna work for this, so we're gonna use a regular screwdriver because it can't reach in that deep. Now I know what you guys are thinking, so get your thoughts out of the gutter. That's all I have to say. One in here, another one in here. Another one in here. And last one in here. And with that last screw in, that concludes our Nintendo NES disassembly, repair, assembly, and restoration video. Don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe to the channel. These videos take a lot of effort to make, so a like and a subscribe helps us out a lot. So please go ahead and do that. And if you need any of the parts and tools that we used in this video today, including any parts from the Nintendo or our FastTech Pro Auto Kit, which is gonna save you a lot of time when it comes to electronics repairs, check out the links in the description box and the top comment. Thanks for watching another FastTech video. Before you leave, make sure to subscribe to the channel and smash that like button. That helps us out more than you know. This is Shiroz from FastTech signing out, and I'll see you in the next one.